Chapter 38. Lin Tai-yü. Xiang carries the first prize in the poems on Chrysanthemums, which Wei Heng, who chefs Pao-ch'ai by composing verses in the same style as his on the crabs. After Pao-ch'ai and Xiang Yun, we will now explain, settled everything in their deliberations, nothing memorable occurred. The whole night, which deserves to be put on record. The whole night, which deserves to be put on record. The next day, Xiang Yun invited Dowager Lady Chia and her other relatives to come and look at the olea flower. Lady Chia and everyone else answered that, as she had had the kind intention to ask them, they felt it their duty to avail themselves of her gracious invitation, much though they would be putting her to trouble and inconvenience. At 12 o'clock, therefore, old Lady Chia actually took with her Madame Wang and Lady Feng, as well as Mrs. Hushui and other members of her family whom she had asked to join them, and repaired into the garden. Which is the best spot? Old Lady Chia inquired. We are ready to go wherever you may like, dear Senior. Madame Wang ventured in response. The collation has already been spread in the Lotus fragrance arbor, Lady Feng interposed. Besides, the two olea plants on that hill yonder are now lovely in their full blossom, and the water of that stream is jade, like and pellucid. So if we sit in the pavilion in the middle of it, won't we enjoy an open and bright view? It will be refreshing, too, to our eyes to watch the pool. Quite right, assented Dowager Lady Chia at this suggestion, and while expressing her approbation, she ushered her train of followers into the arbor of Lotus fragrance. This arbor of lotus fragrance had, in fact, been erected in the center of the pool. It had windows on all four sides. On the left and on the right stood covered passages which spanned the stream and connected with the hills. At the back figured a winding bridge. As the party ascended the bamboo bridge, Lady Feng promptly advanced and supported Dowager. Lady Feng promptly advanced and supported Dowager Lady Chia. Venerable ancestors, she said, just walk boldly and with confident step. There's nothing to fear. It's the way of these bamboo bridges to go on creaking like this. Presently, they entered the arbor. Here they saw two additional bamboo tables placed beyond the balustrade. On the one were arranged cups, chopsticks, and every article necessary for drinking wine. On the other were laid bamboo utensils for tea, a tea service, and various cups and saucers. On the off side, 2 or 3 waiting maids were engaged in fanning the stove to boil the water for tea. On the near side were visible several other girls, who were trying with their fans to get a fire to light in the stove, so as to warm the wines. It was a capital idea, Dowager Lady Chia hastily exclaimed laughingly with vehemence. To bring tea here. What's more, the spot and the appurtenances are alike so spick and span. These things were brought by cousin Pao-ch'ai. These things were brought by cousin Pao-ch'ai. I got them ready. This child is, I say, so scrupulously particular, old Lady Chia observed, that everything she does is thoroughly devised. As she gave utterance to her feelings, her attention was attracted by a pair of scrolls of black lacquer, inlaid with mother of pearl, suspended on the pillars, and she asked Xiang Yun to tell her what the mottos were. The text she read was, "Snapped is the shade of the hibiscus by the fragrant oar of a boat homeward bound. Deep flows the perfume of the lily and the lotus underneath the bamboo brig." After listening to the motto, old Lady Chia raised her head and cast a glance upon the tablet. Then turning round, "Long ago, when I was young," she observed, addressing herself to Mrs. Yu Shui, "we likewise had at home a pavilion like this called the Hall, reclining on the russet clouds, or some other such name. At that time I was of the same age as the girls, and my wont was to go day after day and play with my sisters there. One day I unexpectedly slipped and fell into the water, and I had a narrow escape from being drowned. for it was after great difficulty that they managed to drag me out safe and sound. But my head was, after all, bumped about against the wooden nails, so much so that this hole of the length of a finger, which you can see up to this day on my temple, comes from the bruises I sustained. All my people were in a funk that I'd be the worse for this ducking, and continued in fear and trembling lest I should catch a chill. It was dreadful, dreadful. They opined, but I managed little, though everyone thought it, to keep in splendid health. Lady Feng allowed no time to anyone else to put in a word, but anticipating them, had you then not survived, who would now be enjoying these immense blessings? She smiled. This makes it evident that no small amount of happiness and long life were in store for you, venerable ancestor, from your very youth up. It was by the agency of the spirits that this hole was knocked open so that they might fill it up with happiness and longevity. The old man Shahao had, in fact, a hole in his head which was so full of every kind of blessing conducive to happiness and long life that it bulged up ever so high. Before, however, she could conclude, Dowager Lady Chia and the rest were convulsed with such laughter that their bodies doubled in two. This monkey is given to dreadful tricks, laughed old Lady Chia. She's always ready to make a scapegoat of me to evoke amusement. But would that I could take that glib mouth of yours and rend it in pieces. It's because I feared that the cold might, when you by and by have some crabs to eat, accumulate in your intestines, Lady Feng pleaded, that I tried to induce you, dear senior, to have a laugh so as to make you gay and merry. For one can, when in high spirits, indulge in a couple of them more with impunity. By and by, smiled old Lady Chia, I'll make you follow me day and night so that I may constantly be amused and feel my mind diverted. I may constantly be amused and feel my mind diverted. Won't let you go back to your home. It's that weakness of yours for her, venerable senior, Madame Wang observed with a smile, that has got her into the way of behaving in this manner. And if you go on speaking to her as you do, she'll soon become ever so much the more unreasonable. I like her, such as she is, Dowager Lady Chia laughed. Besides, she's truly no child, ignorant of the distinction between high and low. When we are at home, with no strangers present, we ladies should be on terms like these, and as long, in fact, as we don't overstep propriety. It's all right. If not, what would be the earthly use of making them? Behave like so many saints. While bandying words, they entered the pavilion in a body. After tea, Lady Feng hastened to lay out the cups and chopsticks. At the upper table, then seated herself old Lady Chia, Mrs. Shine, Chi, and Pao-ch'ai. Round the table, on the east, sat Chef Yang, Wong, Ying Ch'un, and Ch'un, and I, Si, Ch'un, and... But it was for the mere sake of appearances, as neither of them ventured to sit down, but remained in attendance at the two tables occupied by old Lady Chia and Madame Wang. You'd better, Lady Feng said, not bring in too many crabs at a time. Throw these again into the steaming basket. Only serve 10. And when they're eaten, a fresh supply can be fetched. Asking at the same time for water, she washed her hands, and taking her position near Dowager Lady Chia, she scooped out the meat from a crab and offered the first help to Mrs. Hsui. They'll be sweeter were I to open them with my own hands, Mrs. Hsui Ma. There's no need for anyone to serve me, Lady Feng therefore presented it to old Lady Chia and handed a second portion to Pao. You! Make the wine as warm as possible and bring it in. She then went on to cry. Go, she added, directing the servant, girls, and fetch the powder made of green beans and scented with the leaves of chrysanthemums and the stamens of the olea fragrance, and keep it ready to rinse our hands with. Shai Ha Siang, Yun had a crab to bear the others company. But no sooner had she done than she retired to a lower seat from where she helped her guests. When she, however, walked out a second time to give orders to fill 2 dishes and send them over to Mrs. Kao. She perceived Lady Feng come up to her again. "You're not accustomed to entertaining," she said, "so go and have your share to eat. I'll attend to the people for you first, and when they've gone, I'll have all I want." Siang Yun would not agree to her proposal, but giving further directions to the servants to spread 2 tables under the veranda on the offside, she pressed Yuan Yang, Hu Po, To, Ixia, Yun, and Ping Error to go and seat themselves. Lady Secunda consequently ventured Yuan Yang. "You're in here doing the honors, so may I go and have something to eat?" "You can all go," replied Lady Feng. "Leave everything in my charge, and it will be all right." While these words were being spoken, Shai Yun resumed her place at the banquet. Lady Feng and Li Wang then took hurry. Scurry something to eat as a matter of form, but Lady Feng came down once more to look after things. After a time, she stepped out on the veranda, where Yuan Yang and the other girls were having their refreshments in high glee. As soon as they caught sight of her, Yuan Yang and her companions stood up. "What has your ladyship come out again for?" they inquired. "You let us also enjoy a little peace and quiet. This Yuan Yang is worse than ever." Lady Feng laughed. "Here I'm slaving away for you, and instead of feeling grateful to me, you bear me a grudge. But don't you yet quick pour me a cup of wine." Yuan Yang immediately smiled, and filling the cup, she applied it to Lady Feng's lips. Lady Feng stretched out her neck and emptied it. And Yu Po and Tsai Zia thereupon likewise replenished the cup and put it to Lady Feng's mouth. Lady Feng swallowed the contents of that as well. Ping Er had, by this time, brought her some yellow meat which she had picked out from the shell. "Pour plenty of ginger and vinegar," shouted Lady Feng. And in a moment she made short work of that too. "You people," she smiled, "had better sit down and have something to eat, for I'm off now." "You brazen-faced thing!" exclaimed Yuan Yang laughingly, "to eat what was intended for us." "Don't be so captious with me," smiled Lady Feng. "Are you aware that your master Secundus, Mr. Lion, has taken such a violent fancy to you that he means to speak to our old lady to let you be his secondary wife?"
Yuan Yang blushed crimson.
She shouted. Are these really words to issue from the mouth of a lady? "But have you a baseball with my filthy hands? I won't feel happy." Saying this, she rushed up to her. She was about to besmear her face when Lady Feng pleaded, "My dear child, do let me off this time." "Whoa, that girl Yuan," laughed Hu Po, "wishes to smear her, and that Ozzy Ping still spires her. Look here, she has scarcely had 2 crabs, and she has scarcely had 2 crabs, and she has drunk a whole saucerful of vinegar." Ping was holding a crab full of yellow meat, which she was in the act of cleaning. As soon, therefore, as she heard this taunt, she came, crab in hand, to sputter Hu Po's face, as she laughingly reviled her. "I'll take you minx with that cajoling tongue of yours," she cried, and what Hu Po, while also indulging in laughter, drew aside. So Ping beat the air and fell forward, daubing, by a strange coincidence, the cheek of Lady Feng. Lady Feng was at the moment having a little good-humored raillery with Yuan Yang, and was taken so much off her guard that she was quite startled out of her senses. Yeah," she ejaculated. The bystanders found it difficult to keep their countenance, and with one voice they exploded into a boisterous fit of laughter. Lady Feng as well could not help feeling amused, and smilingly she upbraided her. "You stupid wench," she said. "Have you by gorging lost your eyesight that you recklessly smudge your mistress's face?"
Pierre hastily crossed over and wiped her face for her, and then went in person to fetch some water.
Ejaculated Yuan Yang. "This is a distinct retribution." Dowager Lady Chia, though seated on the other side, overheard their shouts, and she consecutively made inquiries as to what they had seen to tickle their fancies. Tell us, she urged, what it is, so that we too should have a laugh. Our Lady, Secunda, Yuan Yang, and the other maids forthwith laughingly cried, came to steal our crabs and eat them, and Pinier got angry and dogged, her mistress' face all over with yellow meat. So our mistress and that slave girl are now having a scuffle over it. This report filled Dowager Lady Chia, Madame Wang, and the other inmates with them with much merriment. Do have pity on her, Dowager Lady Chia laughed, and let her have some of those small legs and entrails to eat. And have done. Yuan Yang and her companions assented, much amused. Mistress Secunda, they shouted in a loud tone of voice, you're at liberty to eat this whole table full of legs. But having washed her face clean, Lady Feng approached old Lady Chia and the other guests and waited upon them for a time, while they partook of refreshments. Tai, you did not, with her weak physique, venture to overload her stomach, so partaking of a little meat from the claws, she left the table. Presently, however, Dowager Lady Chia, too, abandoned all idea of having anything more to eat. The company therefore quitted the banquet, and when they had rinsed their hands, some admired the flowers, some played with the water, others looked at the fish. After a short stroll, Madame Wang turned round and remarked to old Lady Chia, there's plenty of wind here. Besides, you've just had crabs, so it would be prudent for you, venerable senior, to return home and rest. And if you feel the humor, we can come again for a turn tomorrow. Quite true, acquiesced Dowager Lady Chia in reply to this suggestion. I was afraid that if I left, now that you're all in exuberant spirits, I might again be spoiling your fun, so I didn't budge. But as the idea originates from yourselves to go as you please, while I retire, but, she said to Ha Shang, you don't allow your cousin Secundus Pale. You and your cousin lied to have too much to eat. Then when Ichiang, Yun, had signified her obedience, you two girls continuing, she recommended Xiang, Yun, and Pao-ch'ai must not also have more than is good for you. Those things are, it's true, luscious, but they're not very wholesome. And if you eat immoderately of them, why, you'll get stomach aches. Both girls promised with alacrity to be careful, and having escorted her beyond the confines of the garden, they retraced their steps and ordered the servants to clear the remnants of the banquet and to lay out a new supply of refreshments. There's no use of any regular spread out.
You interposed.
When you're about to write verses, that big round table can be put in the center and the wines and eatables laid on it. Neither will there be any need to ceremoniously have any fixed seats. Let those who may want anything to eat go up to it and take what they like. And if we seat ourselves, scattered all over the place, won't it be far more convenient for us? Your idea is excellent, Pao-ch'ai. This is all very well, Shang, you'd observe. But there are others to be studied besides ourselves. Issuing consequently further directions for another table to be laid, and picking out some hot crabs, she asked Hasi Jen, Su Chu Chuan, Suchi, Shu Ha, Yinger, Tishi Lai, Mu, and the Yinger girls to sit together and form a party. Then, having a couple of flower rugs spread under the olea trees on the hills, she bade the matrons on duty, the waiting maids and other servants to likewise make themselves comfortable and to eat and drink at their pleasure until they were wanted, when they could come and answer the calls. Xiang Yun next fetched the themes for the verses and pinned them with a needle on the wall. They're full of originality, one and all exclaimed after perusal. We fear we couldn't write anything on them. Xiang Yun then went on to explain to them the reasons that had prompted her not to determine upon any particular rhymes. Yes, quite right, put in Pao. I myself don't fancy hard and fast rhymes, but wine time. You, being unable to stand much wine and to take any crabs, told, on her own account, a servant to fetch an embroidered cushion, and seating herself in such a way as to lean against the railing, she took up a fishing rod and began to fish. Pao Pao-ch'ai played for a time with a twig of olea she held in her hand. Then resting on the windowsill, she plucked the petals and threw them into the water, attracting the fish, which went by, to rise to the surface and nibble at them. After a few moments of abstraction, urged the Xichen and the other girls to help themselves to anything they wanted, and beckoned to the servants seated at the foot of the hill to eat to their heart's content. Then Ch'un, in company with Lai Wang and Ch'un, stood meanwhile under the shade of the weeping willows and looked at the widgeons and eaglets. Ying Ch'un, on the other hand, was all alone under the shade of some trees, threading double jasmine flowers with a needle specially adapted for the purpose. Pao-ch'ai too watched Pao-ch'ai fishing for a while. At one time he went next to Pao, saying, cracked a few jokes with her. And at another he drank when he noticed Xichen feasting on crabs with her companions, a few mouthfuls of wine to keep her company. At this, Xichen cleaned the meat out of his shell and gave it to him to eat. Tai-yü then put down the fishing rod, and approaching the seats, she laid hold of a small black tanker ornamented with silver plum flowers and selected a tiny cup made of transparent stone, red like a begonia and in the shape of a banana leaf. A servant girl observed her movements, and concluding that she felt inclined to have a drink, she drew near with hurried step to pour some wine for her. You girls had better go on eating, Tai, you remonstrated, and let me help myself. There'll be some fun in it then. So speaking, she filled for herself a cup half full. But discovering that it was yellow wine, I've eaten only a little bit of crab, she said, and yet I feel my mouth slightly. So what would do for me now is a mouthful of very hot distilled spirit. Pao, you hastened to take up her remark. There's some distilled spirit, he chimed in. Take some of that wine, he there and then shouted out to a servant, scented with acacia flowers, and warm a tankard of it. When, however, it was brought Tai-yü simply took a sip and put it down again. Pao-ch'ai too then came forward and picked up a double cup, but after drinking a mouthful of it, she lay it aside, and moistening her pen, she walked up to the wall and marked off the first theme, longing for chrysanthemums, below which she appended a character hand. Promptly remarked Pao-yü, I've already got 4 lines in the second theme, so let me write on it. I managed, after ever so much difficulty, to put a stanza together. Pao-ch'ai smiled. And are you now in such a hurry to deprive me of it? Without so much as a word, Tai. You took a pen and put a distinctive sign opposite the 8th, consisting of us, the chrysanthemums, and singling out in quick succession the 11th, dream of chrysanthemums as well. She too affixed for herself the word CIO below. But Pao, you likewise got a pen and marked his choice, the 12th on the list, seek for chrysanthemums, by the side of which he wrote the character Qian. Dang Shun thereupon rose to her feet. If there's no one to write on penning the chrysanthemums, she observed, while scrutinizing the themes, do let me have it. It has just been ruled, she continued, pointing at Pao. You, with a significant smile, that it is on no account permissible to introduce any expressions bearing reference to the inner chambers, so you'd better be on your guard. But as she spoke, she perceived Xian Yun come forward, and jointly marked the 4th and 5th, that is, facing the chrysanthemums and putting chrysanthemums in vases to which she, like the others, appended a word, sighing, you too should get a style or other. And Ying Ch'un suggested, in our home, smiled Xian. Yun, there exists. It is true at present several halls and structures, but as I don't live in either, there'll be no fun in it, were I to borrow the name of any one of them. Our venerable senior just said, Pao-ch'ai observed laughingly, that there was also in your home a water pavilion called Leaning on Russet Clouds Hall. And is it likely that it wasn't yours? But albeit it doesn't exist now. Days you were anyhow. It's mistress of old, she's right. One and all exclaimed, "Well, you therefore allowed the Shaiyan no time to make a move, but forthwith rubbed off the character Haisian for her and substituted that of Hisa Russet. A short time only elapsed before the compositions on the 12 themes had all been completed. After they had each copied out their respective verses, they handed them to Ying Ch'un, who took a separate sheet of snow, white fancy paper, and transcribed them together, affixing distinctly under each stanza the style of the composer. Taiwan and their assistants then began to read, starting from the first on the list, the verses which follow. Longing for chrysanthemums by the Princess of Hengwu. With anguish sore I face the western breeze, and wrapped in grief I pine for you. What time the smart weed russet turns, and the reeds white, my heart is waiting too. When in autumn the hedges thin, and gardens waste, all trace of you is gone. When the moon waxeth cold, and the dew pure, my dreams then know something of you. With constant yearnings, my heart follows you as far as wild geese homeward fly. Lonesome, I sit and lend an ear till a late hour to the sound of the block. For you, yellow flowers, I've grown haggard and worn, but who doth pity me, and breathe one word of cheer that in the 9th moon I will soon meet you again. Search for chrysanthemums by the gentleman of Iham. When I have naught to do, I'll seize the first fine day to try and stroll about. Neither wine cups nor cups of medicine will then deter me from my wish. Who plants the flowers in all those spots, facing the dew and under the moon's rays? Outside the rails they grow, and by the hedge. But in autumn where do they go? With sandals waxed I come from distant shores. My feeling is all exuberant. But as on this cold day I can't exhaust my song, my spirits get depressed. The yellow flowers, if they but knew how comfort to a poor to afford, would not let me this early morn trudge out in vain with my cash-laden staff. Planting chrysanthemums by the gentleman of Iham. When autumn breaks, I take my hoe, and moving them myself out of the park, I plant them everywhere near the hedges and in the foreground of the halls. Last night, when least expected, they got a good shower, which made them all revive. This morning my spirits still rise high as the buds burst in bloom, bedecked with frost.
Now that it's cool, 1,000 stanzas on the autumn scenery I sing.
In ecstasies from drink, I toast their blossom in a cup of cold and fragrant wine. With spring water, I sprinkle them, cover the roots with mold, and well tend them, so that they may, like the path near the well, be free of every grain of dirt. Facing the chrysanthemums are the old friend of the hole reclining on the russet clouds. From other gardens I transplant them, and I treasure them like gold. One cluster bears light-colored bloom, another bears dark shades. I sit with head uncovered by the sparse leaf artemisia hedge, and in their pure and cool fragrance, clasping my knees, I hum my lays. In the whole world, methinks, none see the light as peerless as these flowers. From all I see, you have no other friend more intimate than me. Such autumn splendor I must not misuse, as steadily it fleets. My gaze I fix on you as I am fain each moment to enjoy, putting chrysanthemums in vases by the old friend of the hall reclining on the russet clouds. The lute I thrum and quaff my wine, joyful at heart, that ye are meet to be my mates. The various tables on which ye are laid, adorn with beauteous grace this quiet nook. The fragrant dew next to the spot I sit is far apart from that by the 3 paths. I fling my book aside and turn my gaze upon a twig full of your autumn bloom.
What time the frost is pure, a new dream steals over me, as by the paper screen I rest.
When cold holdeth the palm, and the sun's rays do slant, I long and yearn for you, old friends. I too differ from others in this world, for my own tastes resemble those of yours. The vernal winds do not hinder the peach tree and the pear from bursting forth in bloom. Singing Chrysanthemums by the serene consort. Eating the bread of idleness, the frenzy of poetry creeps over me both night and day. Round past the hedge I wend, and, leaning on the rock, I intone verses gently to myself. From the point of my pencil emanate lines of recondite grace. So near the frost, I write. Some scent I hold by the side of my mouth, and turning to the moon, I sing my sentiments. With self-pitying lines pages I fill, so as utterance to give to all my cares and woes. From these few scanty words, who could fathom the secrets of my heart about the autumn time? Beginning from the time when Tale the magistrate did criticize the beauty of your bloom, yea, from that date remote up to this very day, your high renown has ever been extolled. Drawing Chrysanthemums by the Princess of Hengwu. Verses I've had enough, so with my pens I play, with no idea that I am mad. Do I make use of pigments red or green, as to involve a task of toilsome work? To form clusters of leaves, I sprinkle simply here and there 1,000 specks of ink. And when I've drawn the semblance of the flowers, some spots I make to represent the frost, the light and dark, so life like harmonize with the figure of those there in the wind, that when I've done tracing their autumn growth, a fragrant smell issues under my wrist.
Do you remark how they resemble those by the east hedge which you leisurely pluck?
Upon the screens, their image I affix to solace me for those of the ninth moon. Asking the chrysanthemums by the Hibiscus consort, your heart in autumn. I would like to read, but know it no one could, while humming with my arms behind my back on the east hedge I rap. So peerless and unique are you that who is meet with you to stay. Why are you of all flowers the only ones to burst the last in bloom? Why in such silence plunge the garden dew and the frost in the hall? When wild geese homeward fly and crickets sicken, do you think of me? Do not tell me that in the world none of you grow with power of speech. But if you fathom what I say, why not converse with me a while, pinning the chrysanthemums in the hair by the visitor under the banana trees?
I put some in a vase and plant them by the hedge, so day by day I have ample to do.
I pluck them, yet don't fancy they are meant for girls to pin before the glass in their coiffure. My mania for these flowers is just as keen as was that of the squire, who once lived in Chang'an. I rave as much for them as raved Mr. Beng Shi when he was under the effects of wine. Cold is the short hair on his temples and moistened with dew, which on it dripped from the 3 paths. His flaxen turban is suffused with the sweet fragrance of the autumn frost in the 9th moon. That strong weakness of mine to pin them in my hair is viewed with sneers by my contemporaries. They clap their hands, but they are free to laugh at me by the roadside as much as here they list. The shadow of the chrysanthemums, by the old friend of the hall reclining on the russet clouds. In layers upon layers their autumn splendor grows and ere thick and thicker. I make off furtively and stealthily transplant them from the free crossway. The distant lamp inside the window frame depicts their shade both far and near. The hedge riddles the moon's rays like unto a sea, but the flowers stop the holes, as their reflection cold and fragrant tarries here. Their soul must too abide. The dew-dry spot beneath the flowers is so like them that what is said of dreams is trash. Their precious shadows, full of subtle scent, are trodden down to pieces here and there. Could anyone with eyes half closed from drinking not mistake the shadow for the flowers? Dreaming of chrysanthemums by the Hibiscus consort. What vivid dreams arise as I dose by the hedge amidst those autumn scenes. Why the clouds bear me company, or the moon be my mate, I can't discern. In fairyland I soar, not that I would become a butterfly like Chang. So all night from my old friend Tai-yü, the magistrate, that I again seek him. In a sound sleep I fell, but so soon as the wild geese cried, They broke my rest. The chirp of the cicadas gave me such a start that I bear them a grudge. My secret wrongs, to whom can I go and divulge when I wake up from sleep? The faded flowers and the cold mist make my feelings of anguish know no bounds. Fading of the chrysanthemums are the visitor under the banana trees. The dew congeals. The frost waxes in weight, and gradually dwindles their bloom. After the feast, with the flower show, follows the season of the little snow. The stalks retain still some redundant smell, but the flower's golden tinge is faint. The stems do not bear sign of even one who leaf. Their verdure is all past, nor but the chirp of crickets strikes my ear, while the moon shines on half my bed. Near the cold clouds, distant 1,000 li, a flock of wild geese slowly fly. When autumn breaks again next year, I feel certain that we will meet once more. We part, but only for a time, so don't let us indulge in anxious thoughts. Each stanza they read, they praised, and they heaped upon each other incessant eulogiums. Let me now criticize them. I'll do so with all fairness, Lao Wan smiled. As I glanced over the page, she said, I find that each of you has some distinct admirable sentiments, but in order to be impartial in my criticism today, I must concede the first place to singing the chrysanthemums, the second to asking the chrysanthemums, and the third to dreaming of chrysanthemums. The original nature of the themes makes the verses full of originality, and their conception still more original. But we must allow to the Xia, Haxia, and consort the credit of being the best. Next in order following, pinning chrysanthemums in the hair, facing the chrysanthemums, putting the chrysanthemums in vases, drawing the chrysanthemums and longing for chrysanthemums as second best. This decision filled Pao-ch'ai with intense gratification, clapping his hands. Quite right. It's most just, he shouted. My verses are worth nothing, he remarked. Their fault, after all, is that they are a little too minutely subtle. They are subtle but good, Lao Wan rejoined, for there's no artificialness or stiffness about them. According to my views, you observe, the best line is, well, cold holdeth the park, and the sun's rays do slant. I long and yearn for you, old friends. The metonymy, I fling my book aside and turn my gaze upon a twig of autumn, is already admirable. She has dealt so exhaustively with putting chrysanthemums in the vases that she has left nothing unsaid that could be said, and has had in consequence to turn her thought back and consider the time anterior to their being plucked and placed in vases. Her sentiments are profound. What you say is certainly so, exclaimed Lao Wan, smiling. But that line of yours, some scent I hold by the side of my mouth, beats that. After all, said Ying Ch'un, we must admit that there's depth of thought in those of the Princess of Hen-yu with... gone. And then, my dreams then know something of you. They really make the meaning implied by the words long for stand out clearly. Those passages of yours, cold as the short hair on his temples, and moistened. Observe, Pao-ch'ai likewise bring out the idea of pinning the chrysanthemums in the hair so thoroughly that one couldn't get a loophole for fault finding.
Xiang, Yan smiled.
Who was meet with you this day, she said, and burst the last in bloom. Our questions so straight to the point set to the chrysanthemums that they are quite at a loss what answer to give. Were what you say, I sit with head uncovered. You couldn't, in fact, tear yourself away for even a moment from them, Lao Wan laughed, to come to the knowledge of the chrysanthemums. Why, they would certainly be sick and tired of you. This joke made everyone laugh. I'm lost again, smiled Pao. You, is it likely that? Who plants the flowers? In autumn, where do they go? With sandals waxed, I come from distant shores. And as on this cold day I can't exhaust my song.
Not or see a mountain searching for chrysanthemums. And that last night they got a shower.
And this morning, bedecked with frost, don't both bear on planting root. But unfortunately, they can't come up to these lines. Some scent I hold by the side of my mouth and turning to the moon, I sing my sentiments in their pure and cool fragrance. Clasping my knees, I hum my lays. On his temples, his flaxen turban, golden tinges faint, verdure is all past. In autumn, all trace of you is gone. My dreams then know something of you. But tomorrow, he proceeded, if I have got nothing to do, I'll write 12 stanzas myself. Yours are also good. My one pursued. The only thing is that they aren't as full of original conception as those other lines. That's all. But after a few further criticisms, they asked for some more warm crabs, and helping themselves as soon as they were brought from the large circular table, they regaled themselves for a time. With the crabs today in one's hand, and the only before one's eyes, one cannot help inditing verses pale. I've already thought of a few, but will any of you again have the pluck to devise any with this challenge? He there and then hastily washed his hands, and picking up a pen he wrote out what his companions found in perusal to run in this strain. When in my hands I clasp a crab, what most enchants my heart is the cassia's cool shade. While I pour vinegar and ground ginger, I feel from joy as if I would go mad. With so much gluttony, the prince's grandson eats his crabs that he should have some wine. The side-walking young gentleman has no intestines in his frame at all. I know, signing my greediness, that in my stomach cold accumulates. To my fingers a strong smell doth adhere, and though I wash them, yet the smell clings fast. The main secret of this is that men in this world make much of food. The post-spirit has laughed at them that all their lives they only seek to eat. I could readily compose 100 stanzas with such verses in no time. Tay, you observed with a sarcastic smile. Your mental energies are now long ago exhausted, pal. You rejoined laughingly, and instead of confessing your inability to devise any, you still go on heaping invective upon people. Tay, you, upon catching this insinuation, made no reply of any kind. But slightly raising her head, she hummed something to herself for a while, and then taking up a pen, she completed the whole stanza with a few dashes. The company then read her lines. They consisted of, after death, their armor and their lengthy spears are never cast away. So nice they look, piled in the plate, that first to taste them might fain be. In every pair of legs they have, the crabs are full of tender jade, like meat, each piece of ruddy fat, which in their shell bumps up, and it's a fragrant smell. Besides much meat, they have a greater relish for me still, 8 feet as well, who bids me drink 1,000 cups of wine in order to enhance my joy. What time I can behold their luscious food, with the fine season doth accord, when cassias wave with fragrance pure, and the chrysanthemums are decked with frost. Pao, you had just finished palming it over and was beginning to sing its praise, when Tai-yü, with one snatch, tore it to pieces and bade a servant go and burn it. As my compositions can't come up to yours, you then observed, I'll burn it. Yours is capital, much better than the lines you wrote a little time back on the chrysanthemums, so keep it for the benefit of others. I've likewise succeeded, after much effort, in putting together a stanza. Pao-ch'ai laughingly remarked, it cannot, of course, be worth much, but I'll put it down for fun's sake. As she spoke, she too wrote down her lines. When they came to look at them, they read, on this bright, beauteous day, I bask in the trine door shade, with a cup in my hand. When I was at Chang'an with dribbling mouth, I longed for the 9th day of the 9th moon. The road stretches before their very eyes, but they can't tell between straight and transverse. under their shells in spring and autumn only reigns a vacuum, yellow and black. At this point, they felt unable to refrain from shouting, "Excellent! She abuses in fine style." "Pao-ch'ai," shouted, "but my line should also be committed to the flames." The company thereupon scanned the remainder of the stanza, which was couched in this wise: "When all the stock of wine is gone, chrysanthemums then used to scour away the smell." So as to counteract their properties of gathering cold, fresh ginger you should take. Alas, now that they have been dropped into the boiling pot, what good do they derive? About the moonlit riverbanks there, but remains the fragrant aroma of corn. At the close of their perusal, they with one voice explained that this was a first-rate song on crab eating, that minor themes of this kind should really conceal lofty thoughts before they could be held to be of any great merit, and that the only thing was that it chaffed people, rather too virulently. But while they were engaged in conversation, Finger was again seen coming into the garden. What she wanted is not, however, yet known, so reader, peruse the details given in the subsequent chapter.